Good afternoon. My name is Willow Andreasson. Over the past few days I've been reading from my 2013 book, A Journey into the Mysteries of Life, Lessons from the World Beyond, and it's book 1, The End of the Beginning. And I've gone about halfway through the book now. I'm up to chapter 8, and the chapter I'll be reading today is indeed chapter 8, and it is called I'm So Sorry. It was early 1998. Nana's increasing mental deterioration was reaching worrying levels. It was becoming evident that my daughter had a developmental delay difficulty, but we weren't sure of the level of the severity at that stage. My own health was deteriorating. I was blighted by poor balance and regular headaches. If ever we needed the wisdom of grandfather and the common-sense verbal bludgeoning of my sister, we needed them now. "What's going on?" I implored aloud. The arguments resonating from the neighbouring room were extremely heated. In fact, everything surrounding me was convoluted. Life was too loud, too brash. I staggered from room to room, trying to find clarity and peace. Where would I go to find peace at home? I thought aloud once more. I knew what I needed to do, and, to my relief, found the door to the bathroom. I burst open the door and, to my utter surprise, found grandfather sitting forlornly on the closed toilet bowl. He, too, just needed to find somewhere quiet to sit amongst the earthly chaos that surrounded us. His head in his hands, he turned to look up at me. Once more, only thoughts were needed to convey our messages. I was worried, wondering why grandfather was sitting alone in this place. Initially he didn't respond. Finally, with a slow drawl, he voiced that he didn't like being dead. Concerned, I placed my hand on his shoulder. "You're not alone, are you?" I asked. "Sis is with you, isn't she?" Grandfather assured me that he wasn't alone, that my sister was still very much with him. "What's troubling you? Why do you feel this way?" I thought. It was too easy. He looked me in the eye. What did he mean, too easy? It was too easy. I thought dying was going to be harder than that. "Oh, grandfather," I thought to myself, "you were so ill with cancer. You took no pain relief, had no treatment. What do you mean it was too easy?" I remained silent, knowing there wasn't anything I could say to make him feel better. It was something he had to come to terms with in his own time. The sounds of footsteps were regularly heard making their way up and down the old stairs of our house. Snippets of whispered conversations could be heard in our daughter's bedroom to quieten upon an adult's entrance. My daughter played with invisible people, running between unseen outstretched arms, giggling with utter delight. She would regularly babble to photographs of grandfather and her aunt. In March of that year, I understood why grandfather was so concerned. My daughter, then 3 years of age, was diagnosed with moderate autism, which explained another anomaly for its time. Shortly before her final return to the hospital where she spent the last months of her life, my sister had been through her A-level child psychology notes. They were profuse, but she felt it important to hand me notes on child development. The notes were specific in content. They were describing specific childhood developmental conditions. I stood helplessly in Mum's back garden as I watched my brother trying to reason with our highly irrational grandmother. Mum stood by, also powerless to assist. It was a warm, sunny evening, but the chill of the situation just made it feel like the worst winter ever. The late evening sunset highlighted the brilliance of the red brick walls of Mum's house, reminding me of a huge open wood fire. As I stared at the wall for comfort, I became aware of something hovering near the television aerial. I wandered a bit closer to the house to get a better look. Why I felt surprised, I don't know. I suppose it's not every day that you see your grandfather suspended 15 feet above ground in your mum's back garden. Once that initial surprise had worn off, I asked grandfather what was wrong with Nana. "Tell your mum she has Alzheimer's disease," he whispered anxiously. Once more I found myself sitting up in bed. I'd heard of dementia and knew that Alzheimer's disease was similar in some ways. However, Grandfather had made it clear that there were crucial differences between the two conditions. Both my brother and my mother understandably felt despairing at this point. Nana's short-term memory had all but vanished, yet her long-term recall was quite simply amazing. She was placing herself in ever more hazardous situations. Something had to give. I had a dream about Grandfather last night. He told me Nana has Alzheimer's disease. I told my mother. Mum started pressuring Nana's doctor for a referral to a specialist consultant, voicing her suspicions that Nana had Alzheimer's disease. Mum and my brother endured many battles to be taken seriously, and all too often, consultants' viewpoints were vicious and cutting, basically stopping short of accusing Mum of imagining Nana's symptoms, given that Nana was adept at behaving normally during consultations. Mum was finally vindicated in 1999 when Nana was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. I quietly thanked Grandfather for his guidance, knowing that he has done as much as he could do to help from his side. The most profound nocturnal meeting had taken place during the final months of 1997. Except it wasn't a meeting. It was a vision of the future. A moment-by-moment breakdown of what was to occur on an unknown date at some stage in the future. Only I didn't realise that at the time. A mere nightmare, I thought. How wrong I was. How utterly, utterly wrong I was. It was the warmest day of the month. I was wearing my new dress, a burnt red, long-flowing summer dress. I felt radiant. Wandering down the hospital corridor, I found the waiting area I'd been looking for. The waiting area resembled a lounge in someone's home, slightly chintzy in appearance, but welcoming nonetheless. I booked myself in at the reception, greeted warmly by a sunny-smiled receptionist who sat me down to a lovely cup of coffee. The scene then dramatically changed. That same sunny-smiled receptionist avoided eye contact with me altogether as I left another, as yet unidentified room. All I knew is that I had undergone a procedure of sorts. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Those words weren't uttered by anyone in particular, but they were all I heard. I swiveled on the spot to find myself in a consultation room, being shown images of a brain scan. I saw a white mass in the same place in the sequence of scans. My name was on the negatives. Frightened, unable to face these startling images any longer, I turned away. My sister, clad in her customary black crombie, stood in my line of vision, her expression grave. "What do I do now, sis? What do I do?" I wailed at her. She remained mute and motionless. She couldn't find the words she needed to say at that time. If truth be told, she was likely as scared as I was. I sat up in bed once more, only this time I was breathless and scared. To my utter relief, the familiar warmth of the bedroom embraced me. My daughter, unusually for her, was asleep. I don't remember if I went back to sleep afterwards. All I remember is that I told my former partner about the dream when he returned home from work the following morning. My GP had referred me to an ENT specialist for my headaches and balance difficulties at that time. I was surprised when the consultant decided to refer me for an MRI scan, just to rule anything out, he said with a smile. I wasn't worried about anything at that point, just glad that they seemed to be applying a belt and braces approach to the matter. Until I received the appointment details. Until I saw the accompanying leaflet with its glossy pictures of the very same waiting room that I had seen in the dream. My new red dress was bought from a catalogue sale. It looked considerably different in actual material form. It was burnt red as opposed to the shade shown in the catalogue. Once more, I tried to dismiss my nagging concerns, although I'll admit that I wasn't doing too well in that particular department. So the day came. It was the warmest day of the year thus far. It wasn't just déjà vu for me. I was walking through a living nightmare. Every single second, every single scene matched those opening scenes of a dream to the exact detail. Right down to my clothing. Right down to the decor of the waiting room. Right down to the lowered glances of the receptionist as I departed the MRI scanning area. Right down to the "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry" comment unwittingly uttered by one of the receptionists who didn't think I'd heard a word she'd said as I left. It's a neoplasm, not a tumour. You can live a normal life. It's an incidental finding. You'll be fine. Nothing is connected to any symptoms, the consultant bluntly informed me as I sat scared on an old plastic chair in his consultation room. Years later I learned that I suffered from severe migraines. The poor balance that occasionally blighted me was likely attributable to a pre-migraine aura. After years of poor migraine management, I was given practical advice on how to prevent their onset or, if the onset had been sudden, how to lessen the negative effects rapidly. I lost a lot of weight, got myself fitter, and thanked God it wasn't worse. But it was genuinely terrifying at the time. Not for me, but I had a young daughter. What would have happened to her if the diagnosis had been that of a tumour, benign or otherwise? And yes, I constantly recognised that it could have been worse. It just gave me a nudge that life doesn't always run according to plan. The communications continued via the comforting surroundings of the dream world. There were many strange sounds and anomalies experienced around the house, and these hastened to an almost breathless rate. My sister was seen by my youngest daughter's father, watching him from the living room window as he mowed the front garden lawn. I became pregnant with my youngest daughter in 1999. The pregnancy had been a challenging one, and I was battered by one illness after another. I was also very unwell following her birth. My daughter's father reasoned it would be better for me to try to recover as best I could, and very frequently rose during the night for the night feed duties. One exhausting night we were awoken by our daughter demanding her night feed. Addled by tiredness, my former partner wondered what she needed. Emerging in front of him, a perfectly manicured hand proffered a piece of cardboard with the letters SMA on it. He thanked my sister profusely, raising himself from bed to warm a feed for our daughter. She settled rapidly afterwards. My grandfather and my sister continued to warn of events that could potentially affect the girls or me. A visiting close friend reported seeing my sister passing beyond the glass panels of a closed back door. One particular evening, we had been moving a lot of furniture around, especially in the largest bedroom. We stopped for a break. As we sat drinking coffees, we heard the sound of footsteps creaking across the bedroom floor. Suddenly, the unmistakable sound of heavy furniture being dragged from one place to the next reverberated through the relative silence of the old house. Upon our investigations, however, we established that nothing had been touched. Everything was exactly where we left it.